Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Dungeons, Dice, and Danger from Richard Garfield. Dungeons, Dice, and Danger from Ravensburger is a 1-to-4 player roll and write dice game as you explore one of 4 possible dungeons in this game. There's going to be these 2 sides of the sheet. You're going to have these 2 sides of this sheet over here, giving you 4 possible dungeons, all with the same core rules, but small things that differentiate each dungeon. The general idea is you're trying to kill all the monsters in the dungeon, and you're doing so by exploring the dungeon and by rolling these dice. You're going to roll the dice, and then from there the players are going to have to select pairs of dice. Now, if you are the star player, you get to select this black die as well, which means you have a lot more flexibility in how you pair things up. Maybe we do that and we have an 11 and a 4. That could be a possible pairing. Maybe we have a 9 and a 6. Again, a possible pairing. On the other hand, if you're not the star player, you only have these 4 dice, which limits your options a bit more. We could have a 4 and an 8. That's possible. We could have a 6 and a 6. Actually, 6 and 6 is not bad, but kind of depends on what you're trying to go for over here. But you're going to be using these dice to wander around the dungeon. That's the core idea. Once you have your pairings, again, the first player will have that extra black die, but you're going to use the dungeons to start marking off spaces on the board. So let's go ahead and start this off. Let's pretend we have an 8 and a 4. That might be a good way to go. Could be, it depends. 6 and a 6 actually could work. You know what? Let's use that 6 and the 6. So we're going to use our 6 and a 6. The first 6 is going to be used to mark off this 6 in the dungeon. Now you may not be able to see that well over here, but we have a 6 over here in the dungeon. We're marking that one off. From there, we're going to use a pair of dice. This is not about the number, but a pair of dice, 2 dice that equal each other, to start exploring further into the dungeon. That's our turn. Now let's pretend it goes back to our turn. Let's pretend we're the star player now, and we get this dice. And we're going to go ahead and, again, create pairs of dice. Wow, some high numbers over here. We got 10s and 12s and all those things. We could use our 10 if we want to. We could use the 12 down here. Those are all possible. Let's start off. We can also use a 7 if we want. A 7 and an 11. Can we do a 7 and 11? We could. So let's go ahead and do a 7 and 11 over here. The 7 is going to give us access to this spot over here. Even though we are the star player, we don't have to use the black die. Although to make myself feel better, I'll pretend we are right there. There we go. So we're going to use a 7 over here to mark off this 7, which now means we're next to a monster room. Now, monster rooms are a little different. Monsters have different numbers on them, and you can't see it that well, but this has a 3, 4, and 11, but only the 11 is shaded in. Which means right now we can only deal damage to the monster with an 11, which fortunately is what we have. So we're going to go ahead and mark that off. We're going to mark off a point of damage to the monster. If we want to unlock the 3 and the 4, we have to explore the adjacent rooms that have a 3 and a 4. And then when we do that, we'll go ahead and be able to fill in those 3, the 3 and the 4, which will give us more opportunities for how we can attack the monster. Let's go ahead and go again. This time, we're not the star player. Let's do a few more turns and figure this out. So we got another 11. That's really good. We can't use that die, so it is what it is. We could use a 6. We could do the 11. Let's try to do more damage with just straight up 11. So we're going to do another 11 over there. And we have our 6 over here, which we can use. We already used the 6. This might have been a mistake. This might have been a mistake. Let's see what we can do. There's no 6s over here. The greens are the starting spaces, and from there you can only move adjacent, which means we're actually a little stuck, unfortunately. Which means we could do the following. Let's go ahead and use an ability. We're going to use this over here. I wouldn't actually use this normally, but I'm going to. I'm taking one of my 3 opportunities to use the starting black die, even when I'm not the star player. And I'm going to make a 2 out of that. That way we don't have to take damage. I'll show you what damage looks like shortly, but it's our turn as a star player again. So let's go ahead and show you a few more turns before we move to that. We have a 12, we have a 4, an 8. We have an 11 again if we want one, but then we have the 4. So let's do that. Let's mark the 11 off over here. Right. Now we could mark the 4 off over there, but honestly I think we have this guy without needing that, so let's go ahead and mark the 4 off over here to start giving us some starting points on that side of the board. Then it's back to someone else's turn, back to our turn. We can't use the black die this time, so we don't have an 11 this time. What do we have? We have a 9, we have a 6. The 6 we already saw is not great for us. We don't have a 5. We have an 8 and a 7 if we want that. We could use that. Let's use the 8 over here. And the 7 over, we already used that 7, let's use the 7 over here, okay, which is just kind of because we don't want to take damage. Whenever you can't use a die, you're going to take damage, which I'll show you shortly. Let's do this again. We got that, that, and that. Still no 11, so we can't show you what completing a monster looks like. In fact, once we complete that monster, we'll stop this playthrough kind of situation. If we have a 9 over here if we want. We could use this for a 5 or anything else. You know what, let's do that. We're going to use the 9 to get access to this spot over here. And then we can start using the 5 to start attacking that monster. This one, because we got the 9, we can even fill in the box so that now we can use 5s and 9s. And when we get that, we can use a 3. We're going to do it non-star player turn, so we can't use the black die right now. We have a 5, 1, and 2. That's going to give us some flexibility. We could use a 3. We can't move here. We could go down here. Let's use the 3 down there, which means we might, you know what, let's use the 3 down here, and then the 6 over here, and that's going to give us access to be able to attack this monster here. And now it's back to our turn. Let's kill the last monster. Let's kill the last, there we go. Okay, we have a 5 and a 6 over here, And we have these dice. We're going to use the 5 and the 6 to kill this monster, which is going to give us 2 gems over here. But it means other players have to mark off the 2 gems. When other players kill that monster, they will only get 1 gem, but they do get a free point of damage on their equivalent monster. Whenever you can kill a monster, or capture a monster if you want to be nicer to them, you effectively get to get the higher reward, but other players get a point of damage against that monster, and will get the lower reward when they kill it. Past that, we're going to use our last dice over here to figure out what we want to do. We have a 2 or a 4. We could use the 4 there. This one over here is a 4 that requires equal dice, which won't help us. So you know what, just for the sake of continuing this, we're going to mark this over here, and now we've unlocked the 4, which means it doesn't really help us because we already killed that monster. But at least we don't take damage, because whenever you can't place a die in any way, if you can't use a die pair, you have to mark off your health slowly but surely, such that you're slowly losing your health until you eventually die, at which point you have to stop exploring the dungeon, and you're going to get negative 20 points. You have to be mindful of that. Meanwhile, when you get treasure chests on the board, and there's only 2 of them, you get to choose one of 3 possible rewards, either additional health points plus a gem, or a torch, which you can use twice in the game to simply mark off any space, letting you get from one space to another pretty easily, or you can use extra times where you can use the black die for rerolls. Past that, there's various monsters over here you have to be mindful of. There's various gems you can collect. As you mark those spots off, you'll just collect more gems. There's additional bonuses here. The first person to connect the 2 start spaces of the board from a chain of paths will get 3 gems, and other players will get 1. And then whoever gets 5 of these equal dice pairs, these are pairs over here where you have to place exactly equal dice. So a 4 with 2 2s, a 6 with 2 3s, a 8 with 2 4s. Whenever you mark those off, you have the first person to get 5 of those is going to get an extra 3 gems. And lastly, there's the boss monster. The boss monster has the same basic rules for the most part. You can't actually deal any damage to it until you get adjacent, but any spot in which you get adjacent will be one of the 5 numbers you can start attacking with it. So if you get to it from the 4, you can already start hitting it from that side. If you get to the 5, now you can hit it with 4s and 5s, and you have to slowly go through all their spots over here until eventually you'll get 6 gems, but also lose 2 health. The other players will not lose 2 health, but they will only get a gem for every 3 boxes as opposed to 6 gems. And that's basically Dungeons, Dice, and Danger. You're rolling dice, you're combining pairs, you're exploring the dungeons, you're trying to defeat various monsters. You're either going to end the game when players can lose life points and can no longer explore because they couldn't use dice pairs, or alternatively, when you defeated all the monsters, that will trigger the end of the game. And then again, as I said already, there's 4 different maps to go through, so each have slightly different rules as far as what they do. Just small little, like, what the bonuses are, what certain types of spaces are. But for the most part, once you know one map, the game is 95% for the other maps. And that is the game, which brings us to review, starting off with ease of play. The game plays in I'd say around 45 minutes for the experience. Could run a little long for what the game is doing. It's a game that has the decision space of a 20 to 30 minute game and the game time of a 45-minute long game. As far as teaching it, very easy to get people up and running. Roll some dice, move around the board. Really a fairly straightforward game while giving you that dungeon crawling experience. As far as what I like, don't like, and conceal as not liking, I touched upon already that dungeon crawling experience. In terms of what I like, the dungeon crawling experience is kind of present as you wander around the board. It's a simple roll and write. You roll dice. It's not a cascading bonuses roll and write where you have this chaining into that. You're simply utilizing the dice to explore, to capture or kill animals as to your preference, to gather the various rewards and try to optimize your way towards that score. And there are decisions to be made, primarily in terms of how you explore the dungeon and ensuring that you always have open spots for as many different possible combinations as you can. Sometimes you'll just be stuck. You'll have a 4 that you cannot use. But often enough, as you try to explore, your goal is to try to have as many touch points as possible and to get close to various monsters so you can start pinging them away at your leisure, especially these monsters over here on that first map, the Annoyed Animals. That 2 and 12 and the 3 and 11, that's very hard to kill if you try doing it late in the game. Getting there early, as fast as possible, running across the dungeon to get there, means you won't find yourself at the end of the game simply rolling a bunch of 6s and 7s and being unable to make progress. It has that sense of a few different ways you can try to explore, versus focusing on things to get to first, being mindful of what other players have checked off, and trying to focus on things where you can maximize your opportunity instead of constantly taking second place on points. Overall, it's got a sense of adventure. It's got a sense of adventure. It has that variable dungeon aspect. It's simple to play, simple to teach, easy to go through, generally good things. As far as what I don't like in the game, the biggest issue is going to be the fact that the replayability of the experience seems to come from trying different dungeons. Trying a different dungeon gives you another reason to dive back in. I want to try a new map. I want to explore something else. But I think each map on its own, at least for myself and what I'm looking for in the space, I think for me, each map is good for maybe 2 plays. That first introductory play as you wander through something new, and the second play as you're like, now that I've played it, I kind of want to explore it, but there's not a ton of decision space. Yes, there is decision space, but I'd say 90% of what you do is going to come down to what the dice let you do. There are edge cases of decisions of, okay, great, now I have a choice. Do I want to try to, attack this monster or continue exploring so I get a touch point there? There are times when you have decisions, but I would say 90% of the time, you are just doing what the dice allow you to do based on what they've rolled, and there's less agency than I would like, which does mean that the replayability is less present. There's reasons to, the main reason over here for me, I want to go through each dungeon, I want to play each dungeon twice. That's about where the game caps out for me. 8 plays, and that's it. I don't see a reason to continue playing it. I think once I've explored and optimized around a dungeon, I don't feel there's enough gameplay here for me to continue to want to dive into it. It is a lighter game, lighter on the decision space, and lighter on just what changes game to game. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, I said this already, it does run a little long. I don't know what the box actually says as far as game time. Box says 30 to 45 minutes. I feel it runs closer to the 45-minute range. There's a lot of dice rolling, but then it just takes time to get through everything. It takes time to go through the dungeon, and so I think this runs closer to 45, and it feels like I'd like it more as a 30-minute game, just in terms of that decision space. And I'd say, additionally, without good management, sometimes you just find yourself stuck against a wall. If you don't plan around your dice and what you're going to do, you'll find yourself just slowly ticking your life force down to 0 until eventually you're like, oh, by the way, and now I'm done, and now the rest of you can keep exploring the dungeon. I have negative 20 points, and I'm done, but let me just stick around for another 10 minutes while the rest of you continue exploring and killing monsters that can and will happen to you in this game if you either roll poorly or just don't plan well around having those variable numbers around you. As far as final thoughts on Dungeons, Dice, and Danger, I like Dungeons, Dice, and Danger to an extent. I find it's fun, it's charming, it gives you a sense of exploration, it's a quick rule set, and an overall decent experience. But the keywords are decent. I don't think the game does anything amazing. I think it is well done and gives you enough charm to it and different maps that there's reason to play and a reason to go through it. But again, on the lighter side and not a ton of decision space. I think if you're looking for a dungeon crawler that has a degree of just accessibility and easy to dive into and all that, it's a good game. If you're looking for something meaty to sink your teeth into it, I don't think this game is that. For me, the game is a 3.5 with a caveat. The overall game for me is a 3.5 out of 5. I like it, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but it's also not doing anything particularly amazing. Once you're done with it though, I think it does shift to a 3 for me. Beginning, once I'm done with all those 8 maps, I just don't feel there's a drive to continue playing it. So it's one of those things where I am rating the experience as a whole rating, I'd give it a 3.5, with the caveat that I feel I've already seen what the game has to offer from those maps, and I just don't feel the need to continue playing through it, so a half 3 in that case. But also with enough plays that you hopefully hear what I'm saying. A 3.5, but also I'm done with it at this point. In any case, until next time, recommendations. Recommendations. If you're looking for other game recommendations, there are 2 other dungeon crawling roll and writes. One is going to be Dungeon Scrawlers from WizKids, which I thought was charming, very similar in terms of the where the game feels to me, but a very different approach. More of a real-time, quickly running through the dungeon as you rapidly try to scrawl across as many things as possible. Not really a roll and write, but more of just a write. It's a lot of writing. It's a dungeon scrawler, which is a very cute term, and I think the gameplay also has limited longevity, but is fun, engaging, and different. And if you're looking for what's probably the best dungeon crawler game that I've seen so far in the roll and write genre, is Paper Dungeons from Alley Cat Games. I think had the most engaging gameplay from within the series. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.